Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Daniele Bernardi with us today. He's a CEO at Toolhouse. It's AI for every developer. He's in the Bay Area in Oakland precisely, and yeah, occupied fun roles in the past at Twitter, at Facebook. Here I can see, I believe he immigrated in the U.S. In 2008, right in the middle of the crisis. So yeah, we're going to talk about this company today, what he's building, and everything in between. Bookridegpt.com is presenting this podcast. That's a tool you can use to take your LinkedIn posts and convert them into a nice little Kindle ebook with AI, of course, in 5 minutes. The first credit is on me if you go on bookridegpt.com. Daniele, Dan, welcome to the pod. Tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'll give you the quick intro. You mentioned a bunch of things already. So I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of Toolhouse. What is Toolhouse? Toolhouse is an AI in a box. Like we realized that a lot of engineers still struggle to productionize their agents. Like 80% of agents never leave their laptops, and so we wanted to build a very straightforward platform that in just like three commands will allow you to turn agents into APIs you can call. So you don't have to learn a ton of like low level uh, topics about AI. Just like build things and leverage your knowledge that you already have. I, how did I come to this idea? Well, I was an engineer myself, and I felt stupid when I was like trying to build my first agents. Like a ton of the time I was spending was I spent it in like building the integration and all the boilerplate, and then my actual product sat there waiting. It was something that I wanted to change. And I've built developer platforms back in the days. You mentioned Twitter, you mentioned Meta. And so I kind of repeating the same pages from the playbook. And we're giving every developer the ability to build on top of the Toolhouse infrastructure with the same constraints. So we just like listen to developers, listen to their needs, and make sure that we build when others try to constrain users. We actually try to make them free as much as possible.
Yeah, I can see the value there. We're gonna talk about your startup because I think it's interesting. Definitely can see a product market fit there. But first, like, let's start about the American dream, right? You and I were talking about that before the podcast. My take, I think it's still very much alive, but truth be told, like I'm Canadian. I have clients from all over the world, most of them from the US. I'm not in the US, and the dream is very strong on my end, and I think it's very strong for a bunch of people that aren't building in the US. I think it's getting sort of outdated, right? It's just like immigrant parents most of the time being like, oh, let's immigrate there because they didn't have a better idea of how to make their children successful. In my opinion, nowadays it's to have your kid tinker with AI, start their own companies. That's going to give them 100x better chance than to try to torture them to have introduced Harvard, right? And be accepted in a top school. So I do think, yeah, it's also been weaponized as well by the current administration, right? Like make America great again. It's just outdated concepts. I still think the U.S. is the best country in the world, everything considered equal, especially for someone that does believe in free markets, libertarianism, and yeah, capitalism, of course, right? But I don't think it's the same as it was before. So, what's your take on the American dream?
Yeah, with all the due caveats, there are there's still this like underlying mindset that cannot be destroyed in just a few months or a few years. It's very ingrained in the culture of this country. I personally, coming from Europe, like I love Europe, and I love all the protections that Europe has, and still like uh the user or the person centric approach, like people first.
The
In the US,
sustainability in you.
yes, but then that translates into like something that moves very slowly and a more closed ecosystem. Here, instead, like the opportunity I had here, I could not have anywhere else. Uh, so obviously, you've seen this throughout the years. The American dream, like somebody like me, could come, and if you're, for good, and if you're willing to work, and that's it.
Especially in the Bay Area, right? And that probably on the East Coast as well. In Central US, probably a bit less, but I mean, in SF and yeah, the US is like pockets of ecosystems, right? SF is definitely that. I mean, if you compare SF and I don't know, Idaho or Boise, Idaho, it's like day and night, right? So, yeah, in SF especially, right?
You may be surprised, but it's more consistent than you may think. Like, and especially now, like you see how places like Silicon Valley has become more uh, like constrained and more of a closed circle than anything else. So like you can be li- an outsider but still make it regardless. It all comes to where do you want to have the opportunity, and we're seeing this even from an investment perspective. For example, historically, Silicon Valley was very Silicon Valley based and New York was very New York based. I used to live in both places, and I would say probably after COVID there's been a ton more outreach, so there's been a little bit more commingling, like West Coast firms reach out back to the East and vice versa. So the situation, the deployment of capital, and the opportunity is becoming a little bit more equal. And I think COVID and the distributed work, not remote work, but the distributed work has distributed opportunities across the country. But you can see the same in from a European perspective as well. Like the world's becoming a little bit more blurred and nuanced, and in the end it's where do you want to look at the opportunities, and how do you want to, as a person, as somebody who's making the turn the opportunity to reality, how do you want to bring that opportunity to the market, and to whom. So so long as you can show by example, leading by example, then you'll find the right opportunities. Like there's always ears ready to listen to you, but you need to like really shout about the opportunity from the rooftop.
Right, which is great, which I think is our human nature in the end, right? Like I think maybe some of us were too comforted in our childhood and we forgot that inner savageness, sort of. But yeah, I
Tough
think
life. Yeah.
if you're ambitious, right? If you're gritty, if you're all about growth, right, and being 1% better on a daily basis, I think it's a very nice world to be in, right? Like my question, my follow up to that is like, yeah, we've seen tech hubs, new tech hubs, Miami, Austin, Boulder, and Denver, which are not so new, right? But these
Right.
tech hubs, right? Like, what about someone that is not techie, right? Like, is the American dream still alive for these people? Like these, I wouldn't call them hillbillies or rednecks, but it seems that for people that are not technical, that do not play with technology, it seems that yeah, the device grip is tightening for them.
I thought at first you were referring to vibe coders. The opportunity is ready for them as well, I want to say. But
Vibe coder is amazing. We're gonna get to that too today.
right. I think so long as you have a good idea and good intentions, there's an opportunity for everybody. Like I don't want to sound like the US ambassador here, uh, but I think that's a universal truth. Like, look, I I got my degree in computer science later in my curriculum. I dropped out of university when I was in Italy, and I went straight to find a job. So I wouldn't consider myself a, computer scientist or a software engineer per se. I still have the underlying imposter syndrome, if you will, because I didn't really complete the career the curriculum path as it was mandated. Yet I'm here. Yet I understand code. Yet I write code, and I'm building an engineering platform for engineers. So regardless of your walk in life and your passion and your area of expertise, all it counts is really that you understand that there's an opportunity for you, and it's for you to grab. Nobody's going to give you that opportunity. It's you that need to challenge the status quo, that try to let people see that something different can be done. There's a different way, a new way, an efficient way, a path for everybody to benefit from it, and you go for it. And that is the really fundamental difference. And no university, no MBA can teach you that. No, it's not that just because you understand and can write code, there's a bigger or larger opportunity for you. Actually, as a matter of fact, like when you look at the GDP of the US, like 6% of the GDP is just tech. So it's not that big. It's when you look at manufacturing, it's double that. And you don't need to have like specific specialized skills to be in the manufacturing industry, you know. So When you put things in perspective, we are still talking about a small opportunity in the overall thing. Just because it's hyped and moves so fast and it evolves so quickly, doesn't mean that it's the only thing that exists in the world.
Right. I think everything is sort of yeah. Tech is infusing everything, right? Software is sort of eating the world, and I think humans are adapting to that. I think grit is in every human, right? Talking about software, I think that's infused in our DNA and our software to adapt. Even though we get quite comfortable with food, shelter, and all of this, I do think people will adapt to this for sure. Now let's talk about your background because we have lots to cover today in such few time. Facebook, right? Like you were working for Zuck in its prime, right? Like I think Facebook it was really in its prime in 2010, 11. You were there. What was your role there, and what lessons did you learn from the Roman emperor himself?
It's a good metaphor. I started in 2011, so pre-IPO, and I left post-IPO. So a tale of two Facebooks, really. I was part of a team called Solutions Engineering. Solutions Engineering at first worked with all the advertisers and developers who wanted to build tech solutions on top of the Facebook API. Believe it or not, we did have an API and a developer ecosystem that was pretty much the same size as OpenAI is today, talking about 13 years ago. Um, my boss one day joked that our team made the money to buy Instagram because our run rate by helping all these advertisers was of 1 billion yearly. It's like an insane amount of money for a team that was just like 13 people, you know. So lessons learned was that like when you get into the Facebook blueprints and you get that imprints into your head, it it stays for life. There are certain learnings that I take with me every single time. All of Facebook back then was really all about challenging the status quo, and I was one of those guys in high school that if my teacher told me to do A, I would do B. So obviously that was Disneyland for me. It was like resonating so well. The first day, Facebook has all these mantras like "move fast and break things" and the likes, very famous at the time as well. One thing, I think probably the first thing I read off the wall was this thing that said, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" And then the other one that said, "Think wrong." Oh my God! Like when I read that, I was like, "That's it. That's me." And all those years at Facebook, really as a company, we spend them challenging the status quo. Why things are done this way? We need to do things different way. So really back to first principles, understanding why certain decisions were made, who was benefiting from those decisions, and like try to redo it. And when you look at the history of innovation, when you look at Google, when you look at even before that Yahoo, maybe they all did the same. They started innovating first because they started to really challenge the status quo. If things are done this way, doesn't necessarily mean those are right. And we're doing the same at Toolhouse as well. Like just because you see all these components off the shelf, like it doesn't mean those are the right things to do. Like today, to me, it feels like we are in this freeway, like recently built called the AI freeway. Everybody wants to get on this highway. They need to drive a car. And so they try to go to a dealership and try to purchase a car, but there's no dealership. Everybody's only selling the parts for this car. And then you try to assemble this car yourself, and it's huge cost, takes a lot of time. This car is all wobbly and wonky because obviously you're not a mechanic. Nobody's selling the car. And so we are selling the car with Toolhouse. Like we're building everything just like an assembly line, just like a Toyota today or a Ford back in the days. So everybody at a fraction of the price can get the car they need to get into this highway, you know. And that's part of the think wrong mentality, or what would you do if you weren't afraid mentality. Like we're challenging the status quo here. We're not just like thinking backwards.
Love that. You also worked for Jack Dorsey, the man himself, and also Elon. How was that? What lessons did you get from both? Good and bad.
Oh, I saw basically three different Twitters. 2018 to 2022. I survived Elon. I think that should be a badge I should put on the car. I don't own a Tesla. I try to to make it a net negative for him. He cashed me out. No, no hard feelings. Not a fan, but uh, like when you see basically what needed to be done, despite like I'm not an Elon fanboy, like I said, but the company was a completely opposite situation as Facebook. Where but at Facebook we were trying to be all like goal oriented. Like a goal is a number and a date, and we try to always jump higher than that target that we had. And most of the times we succeeded in doing that, and because the company was so uh, tightly aligned on making that. Fast forward 2018, that Twitter, it was completely messy, and there were no like OKR cultures, no goal culture, and so we were just left being managing this fantastic treasure of a service that really believed in serving the public conversation for everybody. You have a responsibility in making sure that the service is up, in making sure people can get their human rights or voice different ways to do politics. Like a lot of things happen on Twitter, and we were feeling that responsibility. But that was it. There was no goal in terms of like making more money or growing the surveys or making it more healthy. And when there were those goals, there was no alignment internally, and so that really opened a ton of like open wounds, and we were dying from like 1,000 paper cuts. So even I like joined that reality from the very well oil machine called Facebook. Realized immediately, okay, there's something to be done here. And so the first thing I did was really to self-impose myself some goals and to like deliver on those goals. And with time, I was able to progress from partner engineer to the head of developer relations there. And so I managed a team, and my team, when the layoffs came, I only lost two people. One volunteered to depart. Another one, I don't know why, just randomly selected, was the most junior, so he was costing the least but performing the most in the team. So I don't know what kind of criteria they used. I didn't have any say in that. But we were one of the few departments with a net positive growth of users. So I guess that's the reason why we're meant to stay there. The problem was, yeah, like Jack was spot on what the public conversation needed to look like and what we needed to be as a company, but the company wasn't structured for that. And so when Elon came, Elon basically said, okay, I know that the end goal of Twitter is like Twitter can control the world's discourse. And so I can get, if I get a hand on this, I can get a hand of how news are generated. So that goes beyond money. But there was also an operational problem. Like we were a bloated company that turned one profitable quarter in 10 years, and that obviously is a problem. The board becomes tired. You can't really get the firepower you wanted to fend those attacks off. And despite all the great people that were there, like there's very little you can do. And so that's what happened there. And I think it was like, if it wasn't him, it would have been somebody else.
Right. Yeah, sure. But long story short, Elon came in claiming to save democracy. He acquired Twitter, he reinstated Trump, and he did propaganda for him and got him elected. And then he merged the platform with XAI to actually harvest the data. So actually sabotage democracy.
I think you can read it that way. I can also, like, when you look when you read the situation that way, you're only reading the last 2 years really, but you need to go way back in history. I think you need to go back to 2016, 2015, before probably this idea was in Elon's mind. So and again, like, I'm saying this not to save Elon's, like, I can't detach myself enough from what happened. No, don't own a Tesla. I'm not active on X anymore. I used to have like 33,000 followers, so not a big following, but consistent. And then I just deleted my account after I left. I was ready to call it a day there. But you need to understand that it's not just like one person's fault, and it's not just the richest man's fault. It's more like a more concerted geopolitical attack on democracy. Like
Yeah,
there's
and
absolute work.
capitalism, like the upper limits of capitalism, sort of starting to break and yielding diminishing returns. Sort of.
There's simply a part of the world that believes that if you are a, how can I say, for lack of better words, a single person in command, your decisions are going to be much faster. They may or
Yes.
not be right, but they might be faster. And so this, like, applying a very swift turn of events to the world is going to be easier.
Yeah,
So
and
in that case, there are certain things that result from like breaking the unity of the establishment, like what happened with Brexit, for example. All these attempts have compounded over time, and that led to a reckoning in a way of people. So now
right.
we're swinging back and forth from between like what feels like democracy and what feels like not democracy anymore. But we're still able to say what we want. And I think, again, similar to opportunities, like you need to get the opportunities. What's really um, interesting to me is that we need to go back and just like voice our opinions when it's time, and we're not doing that anymore because we're so ingrained to our daily lives, our work. We have so much like dispersion of opinions and opportunities that we don't do that anymore very easily.
Right. I still tell my opinions, and I think that people that claim to be apolitical, they're just like not educated enough. They think that politics means like having an argument, getting angry, and losing neuron cells, or they just know that their point is not valid, so they just don't spend enough time. I still voice out my opinions on this podcast, on Twitter, even if I'm wrong a bunch of times, right? But just coming back to Elon there, he's still one of my favorite entrepreneurs. But I think the Twitter thing and the X saga, like you said, he moved extremely fast. I think he really thought he could make money out of X, right? Then he realized he couldn't. So I think he turned this political to have an ROI, right? Because obviously he's going to have an ROI with Trump, right? So it's not that he's political necessarily. It's that I think he tried to turn it turn a machine that was bleeding cash into a cash producing machine, couldn't succeed, and pivoted it into an ROI capitalistic version of it. But I think he still failed, right? So, and you mentioned that there was no KPIs and OKRs. Like, so my first question is like, yeah, do you agree with the framework I just mentioned with the ROI of Twitter? And the second is, uh, how the fuck does he manage Tesla if there's like no OKRs and KPIs? Is there a method to the madness here?
Yeah, you're saying two things that are at odds with one another at the same time. Like when you see what happened from the inside, it was very clear from the very beginning that he wasn't doing that for the money or the return on investment. He's doing it for one thing, and he wants one thing, just like pretty much a lot of other people out there. What's better than money? What's better than money is power, control. He wants control.
Which is money ultimately.
No, not everything can be bought, and not everything has an ROI. Control power is easier when you get a shit ton of money, but you can exert power with other means. With force, with sex. There's so many other ways of exerting power. Not everything requires money. So the ultimate quest is like, can you actually have control over something? The reason why platforms and developer ecosystems also have were built is because of that. Like when you look at Meta, one of the most successful platforms on earth, the reason they started with the metaverse was to create a virtual world they can completely control and create. That eventually would turn into maybe money, but some businesses could be born and raised and grow on that virtual world. And so you have the power to really create something that didn't exist before, and that is the ultimate form of of control and power you can have. So it's not always about the money. And in Twitter case, even to his credit, actually, was very clear. He said, this is not about the money, this is about controlling freedom of speech. And that's a truth is slipped right there, because he said he wanted to control how speech can be free or less free. And if you read along the line, between the line, you can see exactly how that strategy panned out. And eventually, his end goal is obviously to get to the ear of uh, the most powerful office in the world, which he did. So in the end, the ROI was pretty high on him if you consider that from a non-monetary or non-financial standpoint. Then when you look at the stock price and his net worth, they kind of tanked. But I'm sure he's going to recover from that. He's still a good entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's a very long-term play. Politics usually are the ROIs in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? So classic family office move, sort of. Talking about AI, Toolhouse, you decided to build it on a very real problem for devs. And I do believe in GTM targeting developers nowadays. I think everyone will become one ultimately, or at least if you're playing in the very high space. I think ultimately businesses of the future will be API connected. That they'll be vibe coded if you want, and yeah, I do believe in that version of the future. Tell me why you decided to launch that business, because yeah, you were let go at Twitter, right? And you were like, okay, never again. I'm gonna launch my own stuff now. I have a good idea. Tell me about the story behind Toolhouse.
Yeah, no, I wasn't let go. I left on my own device. I tell my team, hey, either we sleep on the floor for a couple of months, or this is going to be not the future we can control. So see, ultimately, it wasn't really about the money. I actually, when I quit, I didn't get my severance. I could have been laid off. I just like decided to leave because I wanted to be in control of my ability to think in terms of strategy, managing a team. It's really like one of the best things that can happen to you, like when you can be of help to others. And my team, developer relations, was all about like connecting with millions of developers out there. All of a sudden we couldn't do that anymore, and so we were like, okay, like what's our reason here to exist? And so I was one of the first to leave, and then pretty much all my team followed after that. um, and so for a while I started to follow, obviously, AI, since it was called just ML at Twitter. We did a bunch of very interesting stuff with that. We released even a few APIs that allowed you to get the AI representation of a tweet, so you could basically understand what the tweet was all about, categories, name, entities, even if you didn't speak the language. um, so obviously I had an interest from very early on, and when I finally decided to do my own thing. I didn't want to go back to corporate. I promised myself, like, next thing I'm going to do is just just my own thing. And so I kept interviewing for just like to reinforce that thought into myself. And the more I interviewed, the more I bumped into this dysfunctional like job market. And I was like, this is just like yet another confirmation that I should do my thing. And I did it. And when I did it, I started to bump into it was a different project at the very beginning, with a different co-founder. It was a different company, and I was building something myself. I was trying to build some like an agent that could connect to the real world. And this basic premise was so hard to achieve because, again, I was trying to run onto this like AI freeway, and I need to build all the small parts of the engine. So while I was trying to make the engine work like clockwork, there was an evolution of tools and ecosystems, and the understanding of AI itself and new models. And so the time new model will come in, you basically had to ditch all the work you've done so far. So the real AI, the real solution was just like waiting to be built. And all I was building was just the boilerplate, just the support structure, the scaffolding around that. Like if and I was starting to think, if this is true for me, can this be true for other people as well? And so I started to go back to people I knew, former developers that used to build on top of the Twitter API, and they all told me the same thing. Yes, we're doing the same. It's so hard. I wish I could pay if I could just build my agent in 3 lines of code and deploy it very quickly. And when I started hearing that consistently, I knew we were onto something, and so we started to build that solution for them. And before we knew, that company came about usage. Now we have like close to like 1 million executions in just like 4 months. It's insane. But that means like we're responding to an actual need of people. So you mentioned like vibe coders. Definitely, like AI is making things much easier to build and deploy, but still you need to have a brain. You still have to understand if the AI is doing things the right way. And we've seen like memes of developers that or vibe coders that said, "Oh, I built this in 4 days," and then like a week after said, "Oh, I'm getting hacked. I don't know what I'm doing. Help!"
Leo.
Yeah. So that's the still the underlying problem. That's the first problem. The second problem is what's happening is you still need to deploy things somewhere. So mostly bike coders build something and they run it on their laptops. They're not building agents. Agents are things that work while you sleep, are things that can perform actions while you're not there. And this things is not happening because you still need to be in front of a computer. So you're actually doing extra work because you need to code the thing and then it does it for you. So you could have done it yourself in the first place, no? And so 80% of agents never leave a laptop. And when you try to put them in the cloud, they don't work anymore, or they don't work as they worked on your laptop. So we're fixing this big problem. And the larger teams, engineers, CTOs, they're all putting their efforts towards this problem. And it's a very hard problem to have because a laptop and a cloud infrastructure are two completely different kinds of computers. And agents will not behave the same. And so that is the big problem that a vibe coder cannot teach himself or cannot rely on AI to solve. It's about hardware, it's about networking, it's about like computer size or server size or all this sort of infrastructure that you wouldn't really understand if you like didn't tackle the problem yourself.
Right. And right now, I'm looking at your billing here. So, like, there's 500 credits that you give. There's also a yearly plan, right? So, about 500K per year, $500 per year, and zero point 0.6 per credit if you want. How many clients do you have, and how many execs do they use on a daily basis?
Yeah, we have it's on our website. Like there's over 2000 and growing. They build and keep building. So what you can do is obviously get to Toolhouse, and we also have a startup plan. So all the startups are starting to embrace Toolhouse because it's so easy to build their MVP, and it's much cheaper than that. We have startup credits as well. Agencies are our big cohort, like developer agencies. They struggle to really get. They have a skill gap. They struggle to get like talent to build AI agents, but their clients are asking them to do that. And so they come to Toolhouse because we offer them the right infrastructure. We support them in the architectural design of their solution, and then we give them the product. They implement Toolhouse just like they implement AWS into their projects. Everybody wins. So it's fantastic. Yeah, you're seeing here all the connectors that we have out of the box. Those are all MCP servers, and then you can add your own MCP servers if you want, or bring some MCP servers that already exist, plug it into your agent. You don't have to do anything. We host it for you.
Okay, very interesting. There seems to be many use cases, right? Is it because it's mostly vibe coders as your ICP on the platform and they need all of these functions to complete their apps? Why not focus to like one specific use case at first?
Yeah, no, we're not for vibe coders. We are for engineers. We do attract a ton of vibe coders because we have a nice UI and everything, but most of our usage will come from the CLI, the command line interface. Our users live in a terminal window and on their VS Code or on their cursor. And cursor is used by vibe coders as well as
Yeah.
senior engineers. So what we do is to let them build an agent from their editor as configuration. Then they can write custom code, which is the glue between the agent itself and their internal systems. And then with one single command called th deploy, the agent becomes an API. They run the API and it becomes an agent. So very, very interesting, very, very simple. They can deploy to like different regions. They have different instance types. And think of what the Roku used to be in the past of Vercel today. We are AI in a box, and again, like the backend as a service for the agentic stack of today.
Interesting. And how do you get your actual users? What's your go-to market strategy? Is it organic? Do you do some cold outreach yourself?
We meet them when they where they are. So we meet them in a few places. Their IDE, their terminal windows, but also hackathons, meetups. It's all been really word of mouth based, and most of our most loyal users come from just like talking very informally about Toolhouse, our mission, making AI accessible to everybody, and they start using the product and they build and they stick. And when you look at our Discord, like some of our most engaged users really came from this kind of environments, this kind of involvements with hackathons mostly.
Right. Will you get funding for this one?
We just did, yeah. So we're funded, and we're part of kind of this new movement of startups. You know, we uh, can get our capital and like deploy it very efficiently, because we are an AI native company. Like if you think of so many companies got hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, and they need to build and set up this huge team. I think that's no longer relevant. That's an old way of conceiving companies, and it really is not sustainable. We instead are, compared to the smaller but very efficient companies. We have a small team that delivers pretty quickly and reach people where they are, which means that we can do much more with much less. And obviously, our investors are very pleased with this because they don't have to spend as much capital, and we can deploy it very efficiently.
Yeah, let's double click on that real quick. Probably sure need to run. Let's just have 3 more minutes to double click on that. Yeah, because a lot of my clients, for example, are Deloitte 500 fast companies. Yesterday, I did a deep research on them again, and yeah, these CEOs they raise so quick and gigantic amounts of cash. What do you mean there? Do you mean because most is spent in like recruiting humans, right? Like you're building on agents, so definitely understand that one. Like less need of humans, but don't you need that? Don't you think that more capital is better? Let's say that you can just invest more in AdWords, and also do these CEOs raise more to have a bigger exit? Is that what you mean?
That's the end game is to get as big as an exit as you can. It's not really using more firepower for anything, really anything. And if you look at the geography of these companies, they're mostly US based companies. So it's again this self-contained ecosystem of companies that live in a specific place and get this much capital, and they try to like do this self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because
For
you mentioned AdWords, for example. You know, AdWords and ads mostly, they work when you exhausted your organic word of mouth, which means that if you've done that, you're already well established and you have either a good market share, or your users ignore you because your product is not great. So there's only one way. There's no shortcut. You know, no matter how much money or how little money you have, if the product is good, there's no shortcut. Like either your product solves a specific need, or it's not good and you need to go back to the drawing board. There's no amount of money that will ever fix that. You know, it's a universal truth. Now, companies use that for two ways. One is a scare tactic, and that's why they announce all this big funding. So if you raise, I don't know, 1 million instead of 30, then that to some investors feels like that you have a little capacity, but that only scares some investors. Like others actually are starting to look at the smaller companies like an opportunity, where there's going to be more efficient, more like with more constraints comes more creativity. And we strategically don't want to raise with, like, we never went to like top tier investors, for example, and that's strategic. Like we 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 never approached them, and because we don't want to get into that kind of game. The second thing is, if you raise a ton of money, then you'll need this solution is going to be very costly to your end users. Why? Because the temptation there is to build a company with all this like different people and functions, and you need to pay for that. You need to justify margins. Like in the end, it's not about how big of an exit you're going to be. It's going to be how high your margins are going to be. And today, it's a bloodbath. Why? Because when you need to build an AI solution, you probably need an AI model or more. Then you need a cloud environment. Then you need RAG and eval. Those are those like 4 or 5 companies. Each one is a different company with its own CEO, salary, sales team, salary and bonuses, technology. So each one has its overhead. This is going to cost a ton to everybody. What if you can actually do something that's all in one? So you don't pay for 4 different teams, 4 different CEOs, 4 different sales teams and technologies. Just pay for one. It's the same thing. Sells you the same thing, right? It costs you 1/4, 1/5 of that. And that's what we're doing here. So we don't need that much capital to operate. We just need to operate efficiently and to have the right strategy and the right idea. And that's what we're doing.
So, company of the future, couple of humans, armies of agents. Is that how you see it? What would be the impact on the workforce if that's the case?
To me, and this is the key reason why I built Toolhouse, there's going to be a massive shift in the workforce. This is going to, like, I don't think this is well enough understood. Um, Jobs like mine, like software engineer, data scientist, they're all on the line. They're all on the line. They're going to be gone, and we're seeing this with cursor agent, like AI written or AI assisted code writing. This is the truth. It's happening today. So what's going to happen with these people? They're probably going to be laid off and already are being laid off by large companies. So they can sit with a ton of cash in hand, retire, or start their own business. And I
Yep.
think in the future, everybody will have their own LLC, their own small business. They will have all the set of tools that will allow them to do this very efficiently. But they all need to deploy this kind of infrastructure somewhere. And I don't think it's going to be AWS, and it's not going to be the big players. It's going to be smaller players who understand the small family needs very well. And I think it's going to be something like Toolhouse. So we're building because we know that today there are 40 million developers in the world. I think that's going to double in the next 4 years, 5 years, and they all need an infrastructure that's very affordable. Like the fastest growing developer market, do you know where that is? It's in India. India
Mm.
doesn't have the same spending power of the US. Europe doesn't have the same spending power of the US. You need something that's very cost effective for them. And to build something cost effective, you can't raise $100 million and sell it for 100K a year. Nobody has that kind of money in those geographies. So if you want to support that ecosystem, the first who offers the most cost effective yet affordable solution is going to win. Same as Ford. Why did Ford became this household name? Because they built the Model T in a world where all the cars were really custom made and a luxury item. Henry Ford came and said, "This is stupid. Like all the cars have 4 wheels, a windshield, and an engine. So let's build exactly that. If we build that 1,000 times over, it's going to be super cheap for us because it's always the same thing." And that's how it worked. That's how Toyota became so popular and so affordable. So that's exactly the same mindset that we're applying here, except the industry is different. It's tech and it's AI.
Amen to that. I think there's a bunch of people not understanding this because one, they never automated their business, they never recruited humans, they never were part of rocket engines as well. Like that's why I think a bunch of people don't think that humans are going to be replaced. A bunch are kidding themselves. Also, they're scared. It's like, oh, the AI is just going to amplify humans. Yeah, it's going to amplify some humans, right? But then a whole bunch of humans are not going to be able to adapt. It's moving too quick. And I do believe that the only outcome is that everyone will have their LLC. I'm still bullish on spreading entrepreneurship. Like if you become an entrepreneur, you maybe have a 10% of making it. If you stay in the job market, it's 0% because everything will be slashed in the end. And like I said, when we started this podcast, I very much envision a future in which all our LLCs are API connected, right? And that everything can be streamlined and your brain can connect to my brain. And yeah, that would bring scary, exponentially fast intelligence revolution. So yeah, I wish people would understand that. And you've brought various points that are very interesting. Obviously, you and I are biased. I think we're both building our businesses on AI agents and the hopes that this happens. But I'm pretty sure, I'm like 95% sure that this is what will happen. And one last point, like why people aren't waking up. It's a bit like COVID, for example. When it happened, that the economic effects were unclear, but like looking back at it like 1 or 2 years later, which is only when we have the actual data, right? Is like, holy shit, that happened. So I think jobs are being chopped off right now, just that we don't realize. There's no like quarterly reports or after the aftermath report, right? So I think we're gonna realize that in the next couple of years. And yeah, beautiful times for folks like us, but also like very scary times for people that are playing the ostrich and just ignoring what's happening, right? Dan, where can people find out more about you?
Uh, like LinkedIn is the best possible way. I'm pretty active there. So the source of hot takes, and for the lesser parts, like all the other socials. But get me on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active. Drop me a line. Very happy to continue the conversation there.
Yeah, and toolhouse.ai. So that was Dan and Charles for another